When Dr. Aria Monroe entered the ICU that night, she froze. The man on the hospital bed unconscious, pale, fighting for his life was the same man who once shattered hers. 5 years ago, he'd called her a distraction, choosing business over love, ambition over her. Now, fate had flipped their worlds. Ethan Cole, the ruthless millionaire, who built an empire by burying emotions, was completely at her mercy. And as the heart monitor beeped, Aria realized this wasn't just a patient, it was unfinished heartbreak, lying helpless in front of her. But when he opened his eyes and whispered her name, broken, fragile, and full of regret, she knew this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about whether love could survive what pride once destroyed. Ethan Cole had everything a man could dream of: power, respect, and a name that made competitors flinch. But with every success came another wall around his heart. He believed emotions were a liability, and love, a distraction he couldn't afford. When he met Aria Monroe, she was everything he wasn't. Warm, genuine, full of light in a world he'd built on control. She wasn't impressed by his tailored suits or private jets. She cared about people, something Ethan had forgotten how to do. They met by accident. At a charity gala his company sponsored, she'd been volunteering as a medical resident, running late and spilling coffee on his $1,000 jacket he'd looked ready to explode in, till she laughed and said, "You'll survive, Mr. Cole. I've saved worse." Something about that night lingered. For the first time, someone had looked through him instead of at him. Their connection grew fast, but quietly. Dinners that started as business turned into late-night conversations about life, family, and dreams. Aria spoke about becoming a surgeon, about saving lives. Ethan listened, pretending he didn't envy how easily she spoke of purpose. He never told her how her presence made him lose focus during meetings, or how her laughter echoed in his mind long after she left. But as his company prepared for a $400 million merger, the deal that would define his career, his board began to notice his distraction. Missed calls, late responses, and whispers began. Cole's losing his edge. One night, as rain battered the city, Aria found him standing by his office window, cold coffee in hand, eyes locked on the skyline. "You've been distant," she said softly. "Talk to me." He didn't turn around. "There's nothing to talk about, Ethan, I can see it. You're shutting me out." He inhaled sharply, jaw tight. "This merger decides everything. If it fails, I lose everything I've built. I can't afford to be distracted." Aria blinked, hurt flashing across her face. "Distracted? Is that what I am to you?" He hesitated. His silence was an answer. "Say it," she whispered. "If you need to focus on your empire more than on us, then say it." He looked at her, eyes cold with fear disguised as strength. "You're just a distraction, Aria. You make me weak." For a moment, the rain was the only sound between them. Then she nodded, her voice trembling. "Then I'll stop being one." She left quietly, without tears, at least not in front of him. Outside, the storm soaked her through, but she barely felt it. The man she'd loved was gone, replaced by someone who saw her as a threat to his throne. Back in his office, Ethan stood motionless. The echo of the door closing hit harder than he expected. He poured another drink, convincing himself he'd done the right thing. "Emotions don't build empires," he repeated like a prayer. But that night, sleep didn't come. Neither did peace. Days turned into weeks. He buried himself in work deals, presentations, board meetings. He told himself she was fine, that she'd move on, that love was temporary. Then, one evening, his assistant handed him an envelope left at reception. It was from Aria. Inside was a single note, written in her delicate handwriting. "You were never weak, Ethan, you just didn't know what strength really meant." And beneath it, her acceptance letter: Harvard Medical Fellowship, Cardiac Surgery Division. He read it once, then again, and for the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt something he couldn't categorize or control. Regret. He wanted to call her, to say congratulations, to apologize, but his pride wouldn't let him. He told himself it was better this way, that she'd chase her dreams while he chased his empire. Only later would he realize both of them lost something that night. 5 years passed. His company grew beyond limits: international branches, magazine covers, luxury, everything. But inside, every victory felt hollow. He tried dating again, but no one could hold a conversation like Aria. No one made him laugh without agenda. He saw her name once in a medical journal, a breakthrough in emergency cardiac response systems. Her picture beside the article showed her smiling, confident, radiant. She looked happy. He told himself that was enough until the night the accident happened. It was late past midnight when Ethan's car skidded on a rain-soaked road after a long business trip. The crash was severe. Metal crumpled, glass shattered. His driver survived with minor injuries. Ethan didn't. He was rushed to the nearest hospital, unconscious. Heart rhythm unstable. When the emergency team arrived, the lead surgeon froze mid. It was her. Dr. Aria Monroe. Her colleagues didn't notice the shock in her eyes or the tremble in her hands. But inside, her heart was at war. 5 years of healing, of becoming stronger, of convincing herself she'd moved on vanished in an instant, and as she looked down at his broken form, the man who once called her a distraction now lay helpless before her. This time, his life not his love was in her hands. The sound of the heart monitor filled the room, a slow, rhythmic beeping that cut through the silence like an accusation. Dr. Aria Monroe stood frozen for a moment longer than she should have, her pulse racing, memories flooding back in waves. 5 years. 5 years since she'd heard that voice calling her a distraction. And now, the man who once walked out of her life like she was nothing, lay unconscious, pale, fragile, mortal. Dr. Monroe, a nurse whispered, "Should we page Dr. Lee to take over?" Aria blinked, forcing herself to focus. "No," she said quietly, her voice steadier than she felt. "He's my patient now." Her words felt heavy in the air. Professional, controlled. But her heart was chaos. She turned toward the monitors, studying his vitals. Heart rate unstable, internal bleeding, possible cardiac damage. She'd seen hundreds of patients like this, but this was Ethan Cole. She slipped into the rhythm of her training. Commands came out sharp and clear. Prep for emergency surgery. Type and cross-match blood. Get a surgical tray ready now. Inside, though she was screaming, every time she looked at his face, she saw the man who once looked her in the eyes and said she made him weak. Now, he looked weaker than she'd ever imagined. Minutes blurred into hours. The surgery was brutal: broken ribs, punctured lung, heart arrhythmia. Her gloves were slick with blood, but her hands didn't tremble. Every incision was a battle between the doctor she'd become and the woman she once was. When they finally stabilized him, the anesthesiologist exhaled. "You saved him." Dr. Shea didn't reply. She just stared down at his still face. Saving his life wasn't victory. It was punishment, the universe's cruel joke. She stepped out of the OR, peeling off her gloves slowly, her mind numb. Outside, the storm had stopped. The city lights reflected against the wet pavement. She stood there a long time, unable to move. Finally, she whispered to herself, "You don't get to break me again." The next morning, Ethan opened his eyes. The world came back in fragments: beeping monitors, sterile light, the faint scent of antiseptic. He tried to move, but pain shot through his chest. Then he saw her dot at first. He thought he was dreaming. The curve of her jaw, the softness in her eyes, the way she stood with her hands clasped, professional yet distant. It was Aria. His Aria. No, not his anymore. Aria. His voice cracked like dry wood. She froze. Slowly, she turned toward him. Their eyes met, and for a second, neither spoke. Then she said, quietly but firmly, "It's Dr. Monroe now." The word sliced through him more deeply than any wound. He tried to speak again, but his throat ached. "You're the doctor?" "Yes," she said, checking his chart, pretending not to notice his stare. "You had internal bleeding and cardiac complications. You were lucky." "Lucky," he repeated, voice breaking into a bitter laugh. "Didn't feel like it? Rest, Mr. Cole. You need to recover." He frowned. "Mr. Cole, that's what I am now." She looked up at him, her tone ice. "That's what you always were." Her professionalism was flawless, but her hands trembled as she adjusted the foreline. He noticed. Of course he did. And in that moment, memories crashed into him: her laughter in the rain, her soft hands on his face, the way she used to wait for him after long meetings just to bring him coffee. He remembered everything he'd thrown away. When she left, he whispered to the empty room, "You stayed." Over the next few days, Ethan's body began to heal, but his heart, not so much. Every time Aria entered the room, time seemed to slow. She'd check his vitals, update his chart, then leave without looking him in the eyes. It killed him. One night, unable to bear it anymore, he said softly, "Do you hate me, Aria?" She didn't turn around. "Hate requires caring, Ethan. I stopped doing that a long time ago." "Don't lie to me," he said, his voice low, rough. "You still care? If you didn't, you wouldn't have saved me." She closed her eyes, gripping the chart tighter. "I saved a patient, not you." He smiled faintly. "Then why do your hands shake every time you touch me?" She spun around, eyes blazing. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare turn this into some poetic redemption story. You made your choice. Her voice cracked, tears forming. You broke me when I needed you most. You called me a distraction like I was nothing. He winced, guilt slicing through him. I was scared, he whispered. You made me feel things I didn't know how to handle. Then you should have learned, she shot back. Instead, you taught me what it feels like to be unwanted. Silence filled the room. The machines beeped, steady and cruel. Ethan turned away, his throat tight. If I could undo it, I would. Every word, every moment I made you doubt your worth. She didn't answer. She just stood there, trembling, before whispering, rest. Ethan, that's what you need. She left before he could see the tears fall. That night, as Arya sat in her car outside the hospital, she broke down completely. Years of pain, anger, and buried emotion crashed like a storm. She'd built walls to protect herself, but seeing him so fragile had shattered them all. Inside, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in his life, he didn't think about business, mergers, or power. He thought about her, the only person who'd ever seen him, loved him, and now refused to even look at him. He whispered into the dark, "You were never a distraction. You were the reason." And for the first time in 5 years, Ethan Colt, the man who had everything, realized how empty everything really was. The days after the confrontation passed like echoes of a storm, quiet on the surface. But every silence carried the weight of unsaid words. Ethan was healing, yet every time the door opened, his pulse spiked, hoping, fearing, needing it to be her. Arya, on the other hand, tried to convince herself that she was fine, that it didn't matter, that she could treat him like any other patient. But every time she checked his pulse, every time his eyes softened when he looked at her, her heart betrayed her. Late one evening, after her rounds, Arya stood in front of his room, staring through the small glass window in the door. He was awake, staring out at the city lights beyond the hospital's high windows. He looked nothing like the man she'd known. No arrogance, no composure, just quiet regret. When she finally walked in, he smiled weakly. "Still working late, doctor?" She ignored the teasing tone and went straight to his chart. "Your blood pressure's improving. You'll be discharged soon." He nodded slowly. "And after that, we go back to pretending we don't exist." Her pen froze, Ethan, he cut her off gently. "You don't have to say anything. I never got to say I'm sorry." She stayed quiet, focusing on the chart, not him. But he continued, voice low, trembling slightly. "I thought success would make me happy. That if I built something huge, I'd finally matter. But when I lost you, every win felt smaller. Every room felt emptier." Arya sighed, finally meeting his eyes. "You made your choice. You can't rewrite the past just because you regret it now." He nodded, accepting it. "You're right, but I can tell you the truth. I wasn't angry at you that night. I was angry at myself. Because I wanted you more than I wanted control. You scared me, Arya. You made me want to be human." Her breath hitched, her eyes glistening. "Do you even know how hard it was for me?" She whispered, "to keep moving while everything in me still wanted to run back to you." He looked at her like a man seeing sunlight after years in darkness. "Then why didn't you?" She laughed bitterly. "Because love isn't enough when only one person fights for it." Her voice cracked. "You made me feel small, like my heart was a mistake. So I built a life where I didn't need you to define me." He closed his eyes, tears slipping silently down. "And I built one where I couldn't forget you no matter how much I tried." The room fell into stillness. The steady beeping of the heart monitor filled the space between them, like a reminder that both their hearts were still beating barely. Finally, Arya spoke softly. "You hurt me, Ethan, and part of me still hates that you can make me feel anything at all." He nodded. "Then hate me, but don't ignore what's still real." Her eyes flickered, anger, confusion, longing, all colliding in one painful look. "You don't get to talk about what's real. You walked away from it." He reached for her hand. She almost pulled away, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe the truth in his voice when he whispered, "I would give everything I own to take that moment back." She stared down at his hand, the same hand that once held hers in the rain. Now, it trembled, scarred and vulnerable. Finally, she said, "You can't fix this with apologies, Ethan. People aren't contracts you can renegotiate." He gave a sad smile. "Then let me start by not trying to win. Just listen." Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she saw something in him she'd never seen before, humility, a kind of quiet pain that couldn't be faked. He continued, his voice breaking. "When you left, I told myself you were better off. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way you looked at me that night. I saw what I did to you. I've lived with that look for 5 years, Arya. It never left me. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. You're saying all the right words now, Ethan, but I don't know if I can trust the man who said the wrong ones when it mattered. He looked down, defeated. Then let me prove it. Not by words, but by how I live from now on. She hesitated, her heart torn between logic and longing. Finally, she said quietly, don't promise me change. Show me it. Then she turned and walked out, leaving him staring after her with tears in his eyes. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, her words echoing like a challenge he couldn't ignore. Don't promise me change. Show me it. The next morning, he called his assistant and gave an instruction that shocked everyone. I want to cancel the acquisition of the Riverton Pharma deal. His assistant stammered. Sir, that's $1 billion opportunity. Ethan replied calmly. It's a company that cuts corners on patient safety. I won't build wealth on suffering anymore. For the first time, his decisions weren't about profit, they were about people, about what Arya had always tried to teach him. When she returned later that day to check on him, she noticed something different. He looked lighter, tired, but sincere. What did you do? She asked cautiously. He smiled softly. Started cleaning up the mess I made. Not just with you, with everything. She said nothing, but a flicker of warmth crossed her eyes before she quickly looked away. He noticed, and for the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a fantasy. That night, as Arya finished her shift, she stood outside his room for a moment, watching him sleep, peaceful for once. She whispered, You're learning, Ethan. Maybe this time, you'll learn what really matters. He didn't hear her, but maybe his heart did, because for the first time in a long while, it finally beat steady. The weeks that followed Ethan's recovery were unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. He walked into the hospital each morning, not as a patient, but as a man determined to change. The boardroom battles, the late-night mergers, the relentless pursuit of wealth, all of it seemed trivial now. Arya noticed it immediately. He wasn't the arrogant CEO who had left her heartbroken 5 years ago. He was quieter, reflective, and painfully aware of the pain he'd caused. Every decision, every word, carried a weight that had been missing in him before. One morning, she found him in the hospital garden, standing beside the fountain where she often came to breathe after long surgeries. He looked at her, hesitated, then said softly, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to show you that I've changed. She folded her arms, cautious. And how exactly do you plan to do that? He smiled faintly. By letting my actions speak louder than any apology ever could. Over the next weeks, his changes were evident. He established a fund in the hospital's name to help children in need, personally donated to medical research, and volunteered for community health programs. Arya watched him from a distance, her heart conflicted. She wanted to trust him but feared another heartbreak. One evening, as she finished her rounds, she found him waiting at the pediatric ward. A little girl clutched a handmade card in her hands, looking up at Ethan with innocent curiosity. Daddy, the girl asked, her voice shy. Arya froze. She hadn't introduced Ethan to any of the children under her care. Yet here he was, kneeling with a kind smile, showing patience, care, and warmth she had never seen in him before. Ethan looked up at her. I'm learning, Arya. I'm learning to be the man I should have been. Her throat tightened. And what if it's too late? He took a step closer, voice steady but gentle. Then I'll spend the rest of my life making it right. I lost years being blind to what mattered. I won't lose another moment with you, or anyone who needs me. For the first time, Arya let herself truly see him, not as the man who broke her, but as someone willing to rebuild, to transform, to love with humility and heart. The days that followed were filled with small, meaningful moments. He asked for advice on hospital policies, helped organize health camps, and volunteered alongside her on the weekends. Each interaction was a silent apology, each effort, a demonstration that he was no longer the man who called her a distraction. One rainy afternoon, as Arya walked through the ICU, she found Ethan sitting beside a recovering child, reading quietly. He looked up as she approached. Thinking about taking over my job? She teased, trying to mask her smile. Only if you promise to mentor me, he replied, grinning. She laughed softly, and for the first time in years, the tension between them felt lighter. Later that evening, he walked her to her car, the rain falling gently around them. The city lights reflected off the wet streets like tiny stars. Arya, he said, voice low, I need you to know something. I'm not asking for a second chance just because I miss you. I'm asking because I've finally realized that life without you is meaningless." She looked at him, searching for the old arrogance, but found none. Only sincerity. Only vulnerability. Only a man who had been broken and rebuilt by regret and love. "You hurt me, Ethan," she whispered. "And it's not something that goes away with words or good deeds. But I can see that you've changed. I just need to see it last." "I will," he promised. "Every day, every moment, for as long as it takes." The next weeks became a quiet dance of trust. Small smiles, brief touches, shared laughter. And slowly, Arya realized that the walls she had built around her heart were not just crumbling. They were being replaced with something stronger. Then, one evening, as Ethan helped organize a charity gala for children's hospitals, he turned to her, holding a small velvet box. "I didn't just come back to prove I could change," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I came back to ask you something I should have asked 5 years ago." Arya's heart skipped a beat. "Ethan." He knelt down, opening the box to reveal a delicate necklace engraved with both their initials. "I can't promise the past didn't hurt. I can't promise we'll never face hardship again, but I can promise that from this day forward, I choose you. You, not a distraction, not a regret, you always." Tears filled Arya's eyes, but they were not tears of pain, they were tears of hope. For the first time in years, she let herself fall into his embrace. A soft, hesitant hug at first, then firmer, a silent exchange of forgiveness, love, and mutual understanding. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights twinkled through the hospital windows like a promise. And in that moment, Ethan and Arya realized that love, when paired with humility and redemption, could rise from even the deepest heartbreak. Weeks later, Ethan and Arya stood hand in hand in the hospital garden. Around them, children laughed, families celebrated recovery, and life moved forward. He looked at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You saved me," he whispered. "No," she said softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "You saved yourself." And for the first time, both of them knew that love wasn't about never making mistakes, was about finding the courage to come back, rebuild, and never let go again. Some mistakes leave scars, but redemption can heal even the deepest wounds. Ethan lost everything chasing ambition, only to find true purpose in the life he almost destroyed. Arya learned that forgiveness is not forgetting, it's about seeing growth, change, and sincerity. Would you give a second chance to someone who once broke your heart? Sometimes, love waits for those willing to fight for it, no matter the years lost. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to watch the full story for a journey of heartbreak, regret, and ultimate redemption.